Welcome back to 15-Minute Discourse, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's both awe-inspiring and a little bit mind-boggling.
A little bit.
Okay, a lot mind-boggling. We're talking about megastructures and megaprojects.
Right.
Those massive constructions that push the very limits of engineering and have a huge impact on societies all over the world.
Definitely global impact.
From those hypothetical space elevators that have been floating around
Yeah, those are pretty wild.
to the very real problems of urban sprawl we're seeing in these huge megacities.
Yeah, that's something we deal with every day.
Now, I've got to say, the material you sent over was fascinating.
Oh, good. Glad you liked it.
But to be honest, even with all the reading I did,
Yeah.
I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And that's where you come in. I mean, you really have a knack for connecting all the dots and explaining things in a way that makes sense.
I try my best.
So let's start with the basics. Can you give us a clear breakdown of the difference between these two titans of construction, megastructures and megaprojects?
All right, well, think of it this way. A megastructure is more of a concept, an idea. It's all about pushing the limits of what's architecturally possible, even if we don't have the tech to build it yet.
So, like something out of a science fiction movie.
Exactly. And a perfect example of that is the Shimizu Mega-City Pyramid.
Ah, yes. The Shimizu Mega-City Pyramid. I was blown away when I read about that.
It's a pretty wild concept.
A self-sustaining pyramid right there in Tokyo Bay, housing 1 million people.
Could you imagine?
It's hard to even wrap my head around it. Reaching over 6,500 feet tall.
I mean, talk about ambitious.
That's megastructure for you.
It really embodies what it means to be a megastructure. Now, a megaproject, on the other hand, that's something completely different.
Okay, so how is it different?
Well, it's something that's actually been done, planned out, and built.
Ah, so it's already here in the real world.
Precisely. And they usually come with a hefty price tag
I bet.
and a pretty big impact on communities and the environment.
I can see that. So if this Shimizu Mega-City Pyramid is this futuristic dream, what would be a real-world example of a mega project? You know, something that really shows that impact you're talking about.
Well, the classic example would be the Big Dig in Boston.
The Big Dig.
Yeah, that was a massive tunnel project that ended up costing over $24 billion. It basically reshaped the entire transportation system of the city.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really shows you just how big and complex these mega projects can get.
24 billion. It really makes you think, do the benefits of these projects always outweigh the costs? I mean, and the challenges that come with them?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They have the potential to solve big problems and make real progress.
Right.
There are always risks, like going way over budget, delays,
Right.
and environmental impact.
Yeah, you have to consider all of that.
You've got to look at both sides, the good and the bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned new technologies earlier.
I did.
And I'm curious, how are they helping to make these seemingly impossible megastructures a reality? Like, are we on the verge of some kind of technological revolution?
Oh, absolutely. Advances in materials, science, robotics, and how we build things are changing everything.
So we're talking about making things like space elevators and that pyramid city actually feasible.
We're getting closer all the time, and one of the biggest game changers is carbon nanotubes. They're incredibly strong and lightweight, and they're being explored for everything from those earthquake-resistant megatrusses in the Pyramid City to the, theoretical construction of space elevators.
Okay, hold on. Space elevators. That's a concept that just blows my mind.
It's wild.
I mean, a structure connecting Earth to space, how would that even work?
So picture this. A cable stretching thousands of miles into space.
Thousands of miles.
Thousands. It would be anchored to Earth at one end and then counterbalanced by a weight in geosynchronous orbit.
Oh, okay, I'm starting to see it.
And that cable, it could be made from those very same carbon nanotubes we were just talking about.
No way.
And get this, it could allow us to transport things to and from space, materials, even people, much more efficiently than using rockets.
Whoa, hold on. Are we talking about a literal stairway to heaven here? Made possible by these little tiny tubes?
It's a wild concept, but it's something scientists are seriously considering.
That's incredible. But I'm guessing there are some pretty big challenges to overcome before we're all taking elevators into orbit.
Oh, absolutely. Building something like that would be an engineering feat unlike anything we've ever attempted.
I could imagine.
I mean, you'd have to manufacture this enormous cable,
Right.
deploy it into space, make sure it stays stable with all that space debris flying around, deal with atmospheric conditions.
So many things to consider.
And then there's the whole issue of safety.
Right. Making sure it's safe for people to travel on.
A monumental task, no doubt about it.
It really is mind-boggling to think about the scale of something like that.
It is.
And it's not just about reaching for the stars, right? I mean, these new technologies are also changing the way we build things right here on Earth.
You're absolutely right. And a great example of that is drone technology.
Drones, like the ones people fly around for fun.
Well, similar technology, but on a much larger scale. Drone technology is evolving so rapidly.
Yeah, it seems like they're everywhere these days.
They really are. And they have the potential to revolutionize construction.
How so?
Well, imagine swarms of autonomous drones.
Like a little robot army.
Kind of. But these drones would be transporting and assembling modular units, creating structures that can adapt and change as needed.
So instead of having these massive construction sites with all the cranes and heavy machinery,
Right.
we could have these swarms of drones putting together buildings like some kind of high-tech 3D puzzle.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It really is.
But it's closer to reality than you might think. And the benefits are huge. It could make construction faster, safer, and much more sustainable.
And probably cheaper too, right?
You would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it could make it possible to build things in places that are really difficult to reach.
Oh, I see, like remote areas or disaster zones?
Exactly.
That's fascinating. So if we can find ways to build more efficiently and sustainably, it really opens up a whole new world of possibilities for how we design and build our cities.
Couldn't agree more.
It really is an exciting time to be alive. Speaking of cities, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the mega projects that are happening right now in these massive urban centers.
All right, sounds good.
Have you ever heard of the Gotthard Base Tunnel in Switzerland?
Oh, the Gotthard Base Tunnel. That's an incredible feat of engineering.
I've heard the name, but I don't know much about it. Tell me more.
Well, it's a 35-mile railway tunnel that goes right through the Alps.
35 miles through a mountain range.
Yep, it's actually the longest and deepest traffic tunnel in the world. It took them 17 years to build it, and it cost over 12 billion Swiss francs.
That's a serious commitment.
It really is. But it shows you what's possible when you combine ambition with ingenuity.
I can only imagine the challenges they must have faced, boring a tunnel that long through solid rock.
It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And this Gotthard-based tunnel, it's a perfect example of a mega project that took on a huge geographical challenge.
Right.
But ultimately, they did it to improve transportation and connect communities.
That was a major goal.
It's amazing what we can accomplish when we set our minds to it.
Absolutely. But we have to remember that these big, ambitious projects don't always go as smoothly as we hope.
What do you mean?
Well, cost overruns are a big problem.
Ah, I see. So they end up costing way more than originally planned.
Way more, sometimes billions of dollars over budget.
Ouch. I bet those budget meetings get pretty stressful.
I wouldn't want to be in the room for those.
So what causes these massive cost overruns?
It's usually a combination of factors. You might have unexpected technical problems, changes to the design plans, or unforeseen geological conditions.
Right, so you hit a patch of quicksand or something while you're digging the tunnel.
Exactly. And then there's always the possibility of political complications.
Ah, yes, politics. That can always throw a wrench into things.
It definitely can.
It sounds like managing one of these mega projects is like juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle.
It's not for the faint of heart.
And those delays, they're not just about money, are they? I mean, they can have real-world consequences.
Oh, absolutely. When a major infrastructure project gets delayed,
Yeah.
it can disrupt transportation, hurt local businesses, and even lead to social unrest.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even though mega projects have the potential for good, they're also tied to the complexities of human society.
So it's not just about the engineering, it's about the people, too.
It's about the big picture.
Speaking of the big picture, we can't forget about the environmental impact of these projects. From the materials used to build them, to the waste generated during construction, to the disruption of natural habitats, these megaprojects can leave a pretty big footprint.
There's no doubt about that. Take the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, for example.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty impressive piece of technology.
It is, but it comes with a hefty price tag.
How hefty are we talking?
Each aircraft costs an average of $2.1 billion to build.
$2.1 billion per plane.
That's right. It's a technological marvel.
It really is.
But there's no denying that its development and production had significant environmental costs.
$2.1 billion per plane. It really puts the mega in mega project. but also makes you question whether such expensive and potentially environmentally damaging projects are always worth it.
It's a valid question and one that we should always be asking.
So when is a mega project worth the risks?
Well, sometimes they're necessary to address urgent challenges, like when there's a natural disaster or something.
Okay, that makes sense. I remember reading about the Chernobyl new safe confinement. That huge structure they built to contain the radioactive remains from the Chernobyl disaster.
That was a massive undertaking.
It must have been incredibly complex and expensive.
It was. It cost a staggering 2.15 billion euros and took years to complete.
That's a lot of money and time.
But it was absolutely necessary to prevent further contamination and protect people's health.
So sometimes these mega projects, they're not about pushing boundaries or achieving some grand vision. They're about solving critical problems.
It's about protecting people and the planet.
That's a good point. So we have these incredible feats of engineering, but we also have to consider the downsides, the costs.
It's all about finding that balance.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It really is. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of this topic, megacities.
Megacities, those massive, sprawling urban centers.
Those are the ones. Population's over 10 million people.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
It is. And they're becoming more and more common all over the world.
Why is that?
Well, they're hubs of innovation and economic activity.
So people are drawn to them for opportunities.
Exactly. But they also face unique challenges.
Like what?
Well, things like providing housing for all those people, managing transportation, dealing with waste, all while trying to minimize their impact on the environment.
It sounds overwhelming.
It can be. And mega projects often play a crucial role in addressing these challenges.
So mega projects can either contribute to the problems or help to solve them.
It's a two-way street.
Megacities. Now that's a whole other level of complexity.
It is.
I'm thinking of those iconic images of Tokyo, Shanghai,
Yeah.
cities that seem to stretch on forever.
It's almost hard to grasp the scale.
What's it like living in one of these densely populated urban jungles?
It's an experience unlike any other. Imagine a constant buzz of activity, a symphony of traffic, a kaleidoscope of cultures all packed into a relatively small space.
It sounds like sensory overload.
It can be.
Yeah.
But there's also a certain energy, a vibrancy that's hard to find anywhere else.
And I bet the strain on infrastructure and resources is immense.
Absolutely. Providing adequate housing, transportation, and basic services in these rapidly growing cities is a constant struggle.
I can imagine.
And unfortunately, slums and homelessness are a common sight in many megacities.
That's a stark reminder of the inequality that often exists in these rapidly growing urban environments.
It is. It's a reminder that progress isn't always evenly distributed.
It seems like progress and challenges always go hand in hand in these megacities.
They do. It's a complex interplay of forces.
But what about getting around? I bet traffic congestion is a nightmare.
It can be absolutely brutal. Megacities are constantly battling gridlock, trying to create efficient and sustainable transportation systems that can handle millions of people every day.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It's a constant challenge. It involves everything from expanding public transportation to encouraging people to bike and walk more.
It sounds like a huge task. So, where do megaprojects fit into all this? Are they part of the problem or part of the solution when it comes to these megacity challenges?
Well, they can be both, to be honest.
How so?
If they're not planned carefully, they can actually make things worse.
I see.
But they can also be powerful tools for positive change.
Like how?
Well, for example, investments in sustainable infrastructure. Things like renewable energy and efficient public transportation. Those can make a huge difference in people's lives.
They can improve quality of life and reduce the city's environmental impact.
Exactly, especially in these densely populated areas.
It sounds like it all comes down to finding that balance between ambitious development and responsible urban planning.
That's the key.
We need to make sure that these mega projects, when they happen in megacities, they're designed to benefit everyone, not just a select few.
I think that's a goal we can all agree on.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the physical infrastructure. We also have to address the social issues.
Of course. Things like affordable housing, access to healthcare, and economic opportunities.
Those are crucial.
They're fundamental to creating urban environments that are both equitable and sustainable.
It sounds like a monumental task.
It is, but it's also incredibly inspiring to think about the potential for positive change in these megacities.
I agree. They're like giant laboratories for innovation.
That's a great way to put it. They're where the future is being shaped.
And understanding how mega projects and urban challenges interact.
That's essential for navigating this new era of human development.
Well said. It really is fascinating to think about how these mega projects, they can either be part of the problem or part of the solution,
They can.
when it comes to these challenges megacities face.
Yeah.
Speaking of challenges,
Yeah.
you mentioned urban sprawl earlier,
I did.
and I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
What about it?
Well, is it just an inevitable part of cities growing?
Mm-hmm.
Or can we, design our cities in a way that avoids that kind of unchecked expansion?
That's a question a lot of urban planners are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Urban sprawl is, well, it's complicated.
Okay.
There's so many factors involved.
Like what?
Well, as cities grow, people, they often start looking to the suburbs. They see benefits there,
Like what kinds of benefits?
more space, cheaper houses, a sense of community.
Right. That makes sense.
But that outward expansion, it comes at a cost.
Ah, so there's a trade-off.
Always a trade-off,
You get the space, maybe a quieter lifestyle,
right?
but then you're stuck with those longer commutes.
Longer commutes, yep,
You have to rely on cars more.
which leads to more traffic.
Yeah. And then you're further away from, all the things the city center has to offer.
The cultural hubs, the economic centers, all of that. And the more people rely on their cars, the more congestion we have, more air pollution.
And all the health problems that come with not moving around enough.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how individual choices, when you multiply them by millions of people,
Yeah.
they can have some pretty big unintended consequences.
So it's like a ripple effect.
Exactly.
So if urban sprawl is, well, if it's a problem,
It is a problem.
are there any solutions?
There are.
Can we realistically stop cities from sprawling outwards and make them, more compact and sustainable?
Well, there are some approaches being tried out.
Okay, like what?
A lot of times it involves investing in different infrastructure and even shifting how people think about city living.
Ah, so changing attitudes.
Exactly. And one of the key strategies is something called infill development.
Infill development, that's a new one.
So instead of sprawling outwards, we focus on building new things within the existing urban areas.
So using the space we already have more efficiently.
Exactly. Make better use of those underutilized spaces.
So instead of sprawling out, we build up and in.
Up and in, precisely.
That makes sense.
It makes the city denser, yes.
But wouldn't that also make it, wouldn't that make it more walkable?
Walkable, bikeable, transit-friendly, all of that.
Yeah, that's great.
It's about creating those mixed-use neighborhoods where people can live, work, and play without needing a car for everything.
Right, so everything is right there.
Less traffic, better air quality, people are more active, and you have a stronger sense of community.
It sounds like a win-win all around.
A lot of potential benefits.
But I'm guessing there's some challenges with his infill development too, right?
There are always challenges.
Like what?
Well, one concern is that increasing density could lead to higher housing costs.
Oh, right, because there's less space.
Supply and demand.
And then the people who can't afford those higher costs, they get pushed out.
That's right. It's called gentrification. It's a double-edged sword, really.
How so?
Well, it can bring in new investment,
Right.
revitalize neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's good.
But it can also displace the people who have lived there for a long time.
Right, the people who made it what it was.
It can change the character of a community.
So it's a tricky situation.
Very tricky.
Yeah.
We need to find ways to encourage infill development,
Yeah.
but also make sure it benefits everyone.
And that it doesn't just push people out of their homes. So how do we do that? How do we strike that balance?
It takes a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, like what?
We need policies for affordable housing
Affordable housing.
to make sure everyone can afford to live in these revitalized areas.
That makes sense.
We also need to involve the community in the planning process.
Community engagement, yeah.
So those development plans actually reflect the needs of the people who live there.
Right, so it's not just imposed on them.
Exactly. And then we have to invest in things like public transportation, other amenities that make denser living more attractive.
So it's about creating a good quality of life.
Exactly. Make it convenient and enjoyable for everyone.
It sounds like a lot of moving pieces.
It is.
It's like a puzzle.
A big one. And it makes you realize that designing a megacity,
Yeah.
it's not just about engineering and infrastructure.
Right, it's more than that.
It's about understanding how people live and interact with each other.
The social dynamics, the economic forces at play.
It's about the human element of urban life.
That's a great point. It's something that often gets overlooked
It does.
when we talk about mega projects and mega structures.
People get caught up in the technical marvels.
The grand visions.
But we have to remember, these projects, they impact real people's lives.
It's like that saying, We shape our buildings, and afterwards, our buildings shape us.
Exactly.
These mega projects and the cities they're in, they have such a big influence on how we live, work, and interact.
They do. And that brings us to another important aspect of urban planning.
What's that?
Transportation.
Transportation, right?
How people get around a city.
Yeah.
That has a huge impact on how livable it is, how sustainable it is, how its economy functions.
Makes sense.
And mega projects often play a key role in shaping those transportation systems.
Oh, I see what you mean. We talked about the Big Dig earlier. Completely transformed Boston's transportation system. And I'm guessing that things like high-speed rail, subway expansions, bridges and tunnels,
All of that.
they can have a similar ripple effect on how people live and work in megacities.
Absolutely. Having efficient and affordable transportation, it's essential for connecting people to jobs, education, healthcare, you name it.
It's the lifeline of a city.
It is. And it can help reduce traffic, clean up the air, and even encourage healthier lifestyles.
So many benefits.
But of course, these mega projects, they can be incredibly expensive and complex to build.
There's always that trade-off.
There is.
Yeah.
Weighing the potential benefits against the costs and the challenges.
And I imagine there are often tough decisions to be made
There are.
about where to invest resources, whose needs get met first,
Whose needs are prioritized, right?
and how to minimize the negative impacts.
All important considerations.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. And sometimes those decisions involve difficult compromises.
Yeah, I bet.
It makes you realize that designing and building these mega projects, it takes more than just technical expertise.
What else does it take?
You need a deep understanding of the context,
The context.
the social, economic, and environmental factors at play.
Oh, right, the big picture again.
Exactly. It's not just about the building itself.
It's about how it fits into the bigger system.
That's right. And that highlights just how important collaboration is.
Collaboration between.
Everyone involved. Engineers, architects, urban planners, economists, sociologists, environmental scientists.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
This takes a village.
They all need to work together to make sure these projects are designed and built in a way that benefits everyone.
And the planet, too.
Right, people and the planet.
It's a reminder that these challenges, they're not just technical, they're social and political as well.
So finding solutions requires looking at the whole picture.
The whole picture. And it requires bringing together different perspectives, challenging old assumptions.
To come up with new and better ways of doing things.
Exactly. That's how we can create more innovative and sustainable solutions for our world.
And our world is becoming increasingly urbanized.
Rapidly urbanizing.
It's inspiring to think that even with all these huge challenges, human ingenuity and collaboration, they can lead to positive change.
They can.
Who knows? Maybe someone listening to this right now
Maybe.
will come up with the next big idea
That would be great.
for a mega project or a mega structure that shapes the future of our cities.
I love that idea. And it's a good reminder that the future isn't set in stone.
We can change it.
We create it through our choices and our actions.
So by talking about these complex issues, questioning the way things are done, and embracing new ideas.
Embracing innovation, we can shape a future where these mega projects and mega structures, they contribute to a better world.
A more sustainable world.
A more equitable
A
world.
world that thrives.
That's the goal.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And speaking of messages, before we wrap up this deep dive, I
Okay.
have one final thought.
What is it?
I've been thinking, we've talked about, mega structures and mega projects that already exist.
Right, the visions and the reality.
But what if we could just start from scratch? Design our own megastructure.
Start with a blank slate.
Yeah. If you could do that, what would you build? And how would it solve some of the problems facing the planet and humanity?
Wow, that's a great question. It really gets you thinking outside the box.
Right.
If I had to design a megastructure from scratch, I think it would have to address some key issues.
Like what?
Sustainability, definitely. How we manage resources and how to make sure it's fair for everyone.
So it's not just about, building something cool looking.
Right, it has to have a purpose.
Okay, so if this was your dream megastructure, what would it look like? What features would it have?
I'm really intrigued by the idea of closed-loop system. Imagine a megastructure that's totally self-sufficient, produces its own food, its own energy, even recycles its own waste.
Wow, so like a giant futuristic biodome?
Something like that, but on a much larger scale.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But how would you even achieve that level of self-sufficiency? I mean, we're talking about a massive structure.
It would definitely require some advanced tech
I bet.
and a good understanding of how ecosystems work.
So kind of combining nature and technology.
Exactly. You could use things like vertical farming to grow food in stacked layers.
Vertical farming,
It
yeah.
uses space really efficiently.
Makes sense.
And then you could integrate renewable energy sources.
Like solar panels,
Solar, wind turbines, maybe even geothermal energy.
geothermal, cool. I power the whole thing.
The whole thing.
I'm starting to get a picture in my head. It's pretty amazing.
It's a vision of the future.
What about waste? I mean, in a closed-loop system, you can't just throw things away, right?
Nope, everything has to be reused or repurposed.
So what would you do with it?
We have some pretty amazing waste treatment systems. You can break down organic waste,
Okay.
turn it into fertilizer for those vertical farms.
So the waste feeds the food production.
Exactly. You could even use bioreactors to turn waste into biofuels.
Biofuels, so the waste becomes energy.
Exactly. It's all about seeing waste as a resource, not just something to get rid of.
That's such a different way of thinking about it. It's like turning a problem into a solution.
That's the beauty of closed-loop systems.
And it's not just a solution for waste management.
Right.
It's a solution for resource production, too.
Thinking outside the box.
It's really incredible when you start thinking about it this way.
It is. But remember, it's not just about the technology.
What else is there?
A truly sustainable megastructure has to be about the people who live there.
The human element.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It has to foster a sense of community, a shared responsibility.
Right, because it's not just a building, it's a home for people.
A home, a community.
So how would you design this megastructure to make it, a good place to live?
Lots of ways. You could incorporate shared public spaces, community gardens,
I like that.
educational facilities.
So places where people can connect and learn together.
Exactly. And you want to make sure it's accessible for everyone, regardless of their income or abilities.
So it's an inclusive community.
That's the goal.
It's really inspiring to imagine a megastructure that's not just technologically advanced, but also socially just and environmentally responsible.
It's a vision worth striving for.
It would be a testament to, well, to human ingenuity.
And our ability to create a better future.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has been.
It's made me realize that these megastructures and megaprojects, they're more than just concrete and steel.
They are.
They're a reflection of our values, our dreams, and our capacity to solve these really complex challenges.
That's beautifully put.
And I hope this deep dive has inspired our listeners to think critically about these issues.
Me too.
To start conversations about the kind of future they want to see.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, we'd like to thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of megastructures and megaprojects.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new, gained some new perspectives.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, share it with your friends and family.
Spread the word.
Who knows? Maybe it'll spark a conversation that leads to the next big breakthrough.
That would be amazing. And don't forget to like and subscribe to 15-Minute Discourse.
For more deep dives into the topics that shape our world.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep dreaming big.